Me and some other people were walking on these walls above a really dirty river. They were really thin, so you had to balance really well, and they rotated, so at some points you would have stuff to hold on to, but at some points you wouldn't. As we got to the end, people had already fallen off, and I started pushing people off. Then it was only me, and some other guy. The other guy saw me pushing people off, so he tried to help me push off. This was first time, but he was really good, and his feet wouldn't come off of the wall. I finally ended up taking him and pulling him down with me.
People were throwing dead animals into a pile, and they threw a possum on the pile, but it wasn't really dead, it was just playing dead, and dead animals kept getting thrown onto the pile on the possum.
Me and maybe some other people drove to a park for some type of event. Suddenly and maybe some other people come over and get in the car with us. Sits with me, and we hold hands, and then she kisses me, and she says something to me that I didn't hear. We all get out of the car and walk around the park. We walk around for a while, even inside a building, but then the event is over, so we decide to walk back to the car. Suddenly we are in a dark forest. We are still just walking around, but then an animal, which I at first think is a cat, jumps in front of us and then jumps onto me. When it jumps onto me, I can see that it has flaps of skin in between its limbs, so I now understand that it's some type of flying lemur. Because it's on me and I'm scared, I run into a random building and lay down on the bed, trying to crush it because it's on my back. I go through some strange emotional conflict because I'm trying to crush and suffocate an animal, but me and the lemur talk and I explain to it that it tried to attack me first. It tries to convince me to get off of it, but I don't trust it. We also talk about some other stuff that I don't remember. At one point it stops talking, and I think it's dead, but I know this is just a trick to get me off of it. I'm very surprised I haven't killed it yet because its arms are sticking out from under me, and we've sort of been fighting. I finally turn to the side, and it pushes me up, and now we're both standing up. The lemur turns into a and she pushes me into a bathroom and is trying to take my clothes off. I don't want that, and I try to escape. I think someone might have come to the door.
I was in the middle of a field with some people. For some reason I pretended to be dead. Most of them knew I wasn't dead, but was there, and she thought I was. People started dragging me on the ground, and everyone reacted to my death, until I couldn't handle it anymore and I got up, laughing.
I was in a sort of run-down house full of people. We were all friends and having a good time. I went upstairs for some reason and this grungy old man said he was looking for some ice cream. He didn't find any, so he asked me if I wanted to go get some food. I said sure and we walked outside. There were a lot of cars and robots, and I guess the cars were alive. There was a robot walking with me and the old man now, and they were talking about how this one car was sad because it was worn out, but it had better be ready for the events the next day. We got in a car at the end of all the others, and the robot and the old man got in the back seat while I got in the front. There was a robot driving too.
I was on a plane, and I was talking to these two men who were together, and I only remember that one was bald and had glasses. And the confusing part is that I had a baby, but I also was the baby, but I also was one of the men. And I gave the baby to the men, and we were very surprised. It was a mutant baby, and they were like, holy shit, this belongs to us? But I also felt it at the same time because I was them.
Me and were driving in my car, and I didn't know whether to stop or turn left, so I just kept going straight, and I crashed into a music store. We got out of the car and looked at the damage of my car. I had only knocked over a CD stand but almost killed some people. Someone put the CD stand back up and said, "It happens." We got back in the car and drove away.
Me and were somehow at the top of a very tall tree in the middle of the jungle, and we could see over all the other trees. We climbed down the tree until we got below the other trees, but then we realized we still had 700 more feet to climb down. We weren't climbing the trees like normal, but we were sliding down them. When we finally got to the bottom, we looked up at a building that had a bubble as the roof, and there was a man jumping around on it like a trampoline.
Me and maybe some others drove in my car to a park to get my weed because I left it in a hole there. When we get there, I notice the back windshield of my car is smashed, but I get out anyway. And come with me, and when we get to the park it's like a big graveyard, and it's dreary. There is a man with a lot of face tattoos and piercings riding a very, very tall and very scary motorcycle mixed with a four-wheeler. We walk through the graveyard and end up at a part that's like a zoo. I remember being at this zoo before, and there was no animals because it was too cold, so I assumed there was no animals this time either. I hopped on a bungee cord because the only way to get to the hole my weed was in was to go through the animal exhibits. As I'm hanging on the bungee cord, I notice that there's animals in the exhibits and there's a snake hanging on the cord with me, now trying to attack me. I'm scared as fuck, and are just staring at me, telling me not to move. I don't move, but the cord keeps bouncing and bouncing until it's going too much, and I'm flying across the entire park, and the snake snaps in half in the process. I'm flying through the air, and I'm not scared, but I just really hope I don't die. I close my eyes so I won't see myself hit the ground. It seems like I'm falling forever. When I hit the ground, I leave my own body, and I am a monk. There are other monks around me that are like smaller versions of me, and we all start dancing together.
I was at his house with a bunch of people and I was on his phone. I was his screensaver for some reason. His phone seemed pretty organized. We went outside and two of us hopped up onto a street closed sign that was connected to wheels, and there was a little box they got inside. It was at the top of a hill, and they kept moving it until they started rolling down a hill. It was in the city, so they kept running into everything, and people and cars kept having to move out of the way so they wouldn't get hit. They turned it down the street and started going down Southwest Boulevard. They ran right into the cops, and then got out of the box with giant guns. They shot the cops with the guns, and big yellow balls came out, apparently stunning them. The cops started acting like stoners and didn't know what to do. I was standing right there talking to them.
Was a cartoon bat. He had a bag full of stuff and other cartoon animals kept trying to take it from him. Luckily he was a ninja bat, so he kept fighting them off, but eventually a swift little bunny came and stole his bag. Then turned back into a human. I came with him to track down the bunny. We slid down brick buildings and ended up at another building to go into the roof. He was pushing himself in, but he could barely fit. The opening was actually just made of dirt. A half-naked woman appeared, and I warned. She walked up to us and told that there's no way he would fit through that hole because even she couldn't, and then she demonstrated. We followed her to a bar-type place where she suddenly had clothes on, and I talked to a guy about the menu that was a conceptual art piece that was unreadable.
I was staying in a house with a bunch of people, and I was programming keyboards with someone there had built a robot, and the robot was my best friend, but one day he exploded, and I started running around the house yelling at everyone that he was dead. Then I laid down in a bed and drew a picture, and came in and laid with me. She asked me if the drawing was a dinosaur, and I told her that I didn't know, and I kind of just draw things without thinking about what I'm drawing.
Me and ate dinner with our families, and then we went to see a movie at a theater that happened to be downstairs. I don't really remember the movie, but I remember it was stupid, and it was about good versus evil, and that one actor with the eyebrows was in it. At one point during the movie I went upstairs, and there was a ton of old people. Some of them were dancing while others watched. I continued further and saw some making out. I passed my grandma and said, "Hey grandma," and she looked back at me in confusion and said, "Hey grandma," back to me. I continued walking and saw several old women with their shirts off. This is when I got freaked out and decided to go back downstairs. I passed the room of the two old people dancing and noticed that they were actually humping each other. I went downstairs, the movie finished, and I eavesdropped on these three kids that were talking about the movie. One of them reminded me of Jerry Seinfeld, and I was convinced that it was him as a child. Me and agreed that it was a shitty movie, and the preview revealed pretty much the entire plot. We exited the theater through a store.
We passed a shelf of Fig Newton/chocolate bar things that had been opened, and someone had eaten a bunch in the store. Picked one up to buy it,